Ladies and gentlemen, my name's Joe Vales. I'm running for City Council District 4. This is my second term that I hope to win. I'm a United States Marine Corps veteran, and I work for you. And I've done a lot, City Council. It doesn't just take one person, it takes us all to vote together. I'm a person that brings people together, and I'm here to make sure that Emmett is a resourceful place for everyone. And do for the city is we're trying to beautify it. We're trying to work with our businesses. We're working with our youth. We're working with our seniors. We have the Simpson Center open now for all seniors and youth. We have the skate park for the youth. We have Airtopia for the youth. And if you want to keep what we're doing moving forward, going forward in life, then you know what? Vote for me for City Council District 4. Let us prove to you that we can get the job done.
Hi, welcome to Crystal Clear. I am Crystal Ruiz, and I'm here today with a good friend of mine, Doug Gibbs. Doug, how are you doing today?
Fantastic. I'm in paradise.
I heard you're not in California anymore, are you?
No. I moved to the Oregon coast, and while the laws are a little bit better here, not by a lot, but the area I'm in is fantastic. It's just really paradise.
Oh, I hear you. I'm envious of where you're at, especially in
I
your
missed my
life.
Constitution classes though. I was doing like half a dozen Constitution classes down there in Southern California. Don't have that up here. Everything I do now is online, but it is paradise. You know it's a cool day when you wake up and you decide, you know what, I'm gonna chop wood today.
Oh, that sounds awesome. But you know what? You are my go-to guy for Constitution, and you know that. I think, did you realize that we met, I think in 2012,
Something like that.
when I first ran for city council.
Hmm.
And you were just masterful then, and you are more important, especially in this day and age, to not just me, but to America in general. And you have now not you were on the radio back then, right?
Yeah. No, I just started on AM radio about a year before that, 2011, and I was
That's what
on
I thought.
one station on Saturdays for
Hmm.
1 hour. At the station was in San Bernardino at the time. I'm now with KMET out of Beaumont with 2 hours on Saturdays. Plus, I have a second program that's on two stations in the San Diego market, Salem Media.
Wow. Wow. And you've been on a lot of radio stations or TV stations though too, right?
Yeah, well, I've been on Fox News like five
Hmm.
times, One America News twice. Well, there's a list of others. NPR actually came to my house and interviewed me in my dining room one time. And then when I listened to it later, I was surprised they didn't Katie Couric edit it. So
Well, you know what? You are, like I said, you're the expert when it comes to the Constitution, when it
thank
comes
you,
to America in general.
thank you very much.
And so I truly appreciate it.
Well,
Sorry, we haven't.
I've been a constitutionalist my whole life. Someone was asking me the other day, when did how long have I been a constitutionalist? Matter of fact, I was on the Power Hour this morning, and I was asked, well, how long have you been a constitutionalist? How many long have you been studying this? And I'm like, about 50 years. And they said, you're not that old, are you? I said, well, I was 8. I was 8 when I started my studies, but basically for half a century. And I'm self-taught. I've got most of my resources are mine. So I own over 4,000 books, and I'd say close to half of them are nonfiction, history, and Constitution and stuff like that. I have some of them are originals, like the 1823, A New View of the Constitution of the United States by John Taylor of Caroline. I've got John Locke. I've got books that fall apart if you're not careful when you pick them up because they're sold. So, and I take a lot of pride in that because I'm a firm believer that if you want to know the truth, you go to the original source.
Oh,
You don't
absolutely.
believe. It's funny because you don't believe a bunch of silly professors. And I said that when I was at a lighthouse the other day to the tour guide. It turned out the tour guide's husband is one of those silly professors, and
Oh.
so I went and talked to him, and turned out he and I were on the same wavelength. But it was kind of funny because he was telling me, yeah, he said I'm a rarity in the public colleges. Most of them But
Oh yeah,
because
very liberal.
there's a narrative. There's a narrative that is being
Hmm.
chased, and so the interpretation is the narrative. People say, "Well, that's how you interpret the Constitution." No, I go back to the original. I'm not interpreting it. I'm telling you what they said, what they wrote.
At
My
the time.
opinion is out of it.
Hmm.
Yeah.
At the
So
time. And I took a look at some of the materials you have on your website. Absolutely fascinating. And I pulled a lot of them down and downloaded them because we homeschool our kids.
mhm.
They already are very well versed on the Constitution of the United States, the founding fathers. They were thrilled to find out that our family actually goes back to the Mayflower Compact, signing of the Mayflower Compact.
Very cool.
So they're fascinated to learn more and more about what are the ground rules? How did we really start way back then? And
Mhm.
how did we come so far off of what our founding fathers really wanted for us?
Well, and that's
And
something we could
so
discuss
those
today.
materials,
Well, it's
yeah,
funny
those
too because
materials.
I've written 10 books. 2 of them are textbooks. One is a government textbook. Then the other one is a history textbook, but it's from the Saxons to Jefferson. And then I'm writing part 2 from
Mm-hmm.
Jefferson to the Reconstruction, and then since Reconstruction. So it's a 3-part series of books. It's over 700 pages textbook. And I actually used those as textbooks because I used to teach middle school and high school in the homeschool and private school system while I was in Southern California. Part of the reason why I waited until July to move is because I had to wait till the school year was over. So I still had 2 more classes of students. So, I'm not just a constitutionalist, I'm a historian. I've done a lot of deep studies of history. And once again, I go back to original documents. I'm self-taught. I've got, and I think 85 of the 90 something, references that resources I used for my history textbook, I own. So my wife was cracking up because when I was doing my bibliography, I'm like, I got 4 stacks of books that are up, up to my chair, and I'm going through each book. But because once again, truth is so important, and they are not putting out truth; they're putting out narrative, and I'm all
Right. And
about the truth.
the way you articulate it makes it simple for anyone to understand. And
I appreciate that.
that's what makes it so invaluable because today everybody puts in their ideas and their thoughts
Mm-hmm.
and frankly all their BS, and you just go right down to it and make it so that we can actually understand as if we're there.
Well,
So
thank you.
I appreciate
Well, my
all that you've
grandkids are
done in
convinced.
that.
My grandkids are convinced I'm hundreds of years old because the only way I could know so much is that I had to have been there. So,
You must have, Doug. But that means I would have been right alongside of you. So I don't think I like that idea so much. So I have some serious questions.
let,
You know,
let's dig in.
um, yeah, let's get started because these right now we're in some really turbulent times, and frankly, Doug, I'm a Christian. That my faith is important to me, and I think we're getting really close to that end part of the Revelations, as far as I can tell. But if anything's going to save us, it's our belief in God and our trust in what he's doing. But in the meantime, he doesn't want us to give up, and he does want us to fight. And one of the ways that we as Americans fight is our vote. And voting is so important this time. And I want you to talk about how did we come about voting, and how did the system come about? Why is it so important? And then we'll go from there.
All right. Well, first of all, I'll open then with a statement that I try to use most of the time I speak. I'm also a public speaker. Matter of fact, I was just in Southern California with a bunch of events last month. And one of the things I like to tell my audience is this: we are not going to get our political house in order until we get our faith house in order. If we
Good
don't get
point.
right with God, the politics don't matter. So,
Right.
so first of all, the foundation of our movement must be our faith. And that was the foundation of the movement then. And one of the stories I like to tell is if you look in the Bible, the number 40 appears 159 times. And every time that the number 40 appears, it is a period of renewal, of going from something bad to something good. 40 40 years wandering in the desert, 40 days and nights of rain. And so, the fasting for
Yeah.
40 days. It was always going from something bad to a renewal. So
Yeah.
40 is the number of renewal biblically. Now, in early America, the Mayflower and the Pilgrims and those of Jamestown, they were very, 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 they're people of faith, and they were that was an important part of their lives. First thing that the Jamestown did, even though they weren't there for religious freedom in the same way that Mayflower was, the first thing they did, their first permanent building they built was the church. First thing they do when they got off the ship is they put out a bunch of benches, they put some tarps over the trees, and they held a service. So that is a very important part of our foundation, our beginning as a country, regardless of what some people might say with 1619 Project and all that garbage. And over time, what happened in the colonies, the same thing that happens in any civilization, the civilization, the society began to move away from God. And by the 1660s, and understand, this is, 40 years later
That's
after the Pilgrims
rapidly.
landed? That's pretty
Yeah.
quick. In 1662, the pastors in Massachusetts had realized that the pews were not as full as they used to be. And so they decided that the way to attract people back to the churches was to water down the word, and they called it the halfway covenant. If you're halfway good with God, good enough, have communion. As long as you're
Oh, wow.
51% of the time good, right? So
Wow.
and it just it made everything worse, because now the people who grew up believing in the halfway covenant, now they become adults and they become business owners and they become ministers, and it
And
gets
then
worse
it's
and worse.
watered down and watered
Yeah,
down
and it
and
just
watered
gets
down.
worse and worse and worse. And so in 1734, this guy named and for those of you who are theologians or you know the history of Christianity and all that, you know these past pastors, you'll recognize this name, Jonathan Edwards, who was a pastor in Northampton, Massachusetts, began preaching, and something in the hands of an angry God. I can't remember the name of the first sermon, but anyway, and what it did is it ignited a revival in that town. People got excited about the God. He began to bring back the basic teachings and what sin is, and he started pointing sin out, not to the person, but to the sin. And what wound up happening in Northampton is people began to convert back to their faith. New people were converting to Christianity. When you surround yourself with God, you begin to recognize evil more easily. It's sort of like I used to work for a credit union. I handled a lot of cash. And because I had the genuine thing in my hands all the time, counterfeits were very easy to spot because I could feel it. Same thing with our faith. When we surround ourselves, fellowship with Christians, we surround ourselves with God's word, we more easily recognize the counterfeits, the fakes, just like handling cash, all right? And so that's what was happening in Northampton. And so the bad politicians were gone. The business owners either shaped up or went out of business, and out of it, Northampton began to prosper, and began to grow.
And that was what year, Doug?
1734.
Wow.
So
Okay.
other towns in the area took notice. Pastors began to preach the same type of sermons. And before long, 100 communities were experiencing revival. Word got to Britain. George Whitefield was a pastor in Britain who traveled to the state or the colonies to find out, hey, what's going on? I need to learn about what this revival is all about. He heard Jonathan Edwards preach. He says, your message needs to go throughout the colonies. So George Whitefield made 7 trips to the colonies to make sure that the message that Jonathan Edwards was preaching went from the north to the southern tip of the colonies. And we had what is known as the Great Awakening. The entire English colonies went through this Great Awakening, this reawakening of faith. Now, remember, I started this with 40, the number 40,
Right.
remember? Okay.
Yeah.
So now we get to the revolutionary times.
Mm-hmm.
And Britain is tyrannical, but they recognize it because they're good with God because of that Great Awakening. And they recognize what's going on. And for the first time, they finally come together to stand firm against Britain with something called the Articles of Association, which was an agreement by all 13 colonies
Mhm.
to boycott British goods because of the taxes and stuff like that. To the year, exactly 40 years after Jonathan Edwards began that Great Awakening.
Now we're getting
That
into
Now, to me, that number 40 shows not only renewal, but God's hand on this country. I started with that on purpose. I want us to understand God's hand was on this country, and that number 40 being there is a key aspect to us realizing that.
and that is the time approximately when the Black Robe Regiment was there, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, these were pastors who were preaching independence.
Mm-hmm.
And in fact, when the British soldiers started showing up, they targeted them first.
Mm-hmm.
And when the revolution began, these were the pastors who, under their black robe, had their uniform,
Mm-hmm.
and they were ready to roll.
They taught some of their parishioners how to shoot. Like they showed them how to become freedom fighters.
Well, it's not just that, but see, the Pilgrims had brought something to the colonies that wasn't
Ooh.
allowed in Britain. The
And what
Geneva
was that?
Bible. The Geneva
Ooh.
Bible. The Geneva Bible had commentary on the side. And in that commentary, one of the commentary was that the divine right of kings was not biblical. This is the reason why the King James Bible was put together. King James wanted to get rid of that commentary. But the Bible in America was the Geneva Bible. And they understood from the Geneva Bible that divine right of kings, all of that jazz was not biblical. They were already biblically positioned for revolution and resistance.
From the beginning.
Now they tried to do things peaceful at first, but of course, you know, the British wouldn't have it, and so we wound up with our revolution. And so this and then you get to your Declaration of Independence, and once again, Declaration of Independence full of all kinds of Christian references. You know, you go to George Washington's farewell speech. I mean, you know, a politician would be slammed for not abiding by separation of church and state if they gave that kind of speech. So that Christian foundation is very, very important, and it is there.
Well, I'm going to pause you. That separation of church and state doesn't really exist, does it?
No, it's not. Well, it's not in the Constitution.
Right.
The idea of it comes from a letter between Thomas Jefferson and the Danbury Convention, which was a Baptist convention, right? Which was a Baptist convention out of Danbury, Connecticut. And the established church were the Congregationalists. And if you were not a Congregationalist and a member in good standing of the Congregationalist church, you couldn't vote, you couldn't hold office, you couldn't participate in other civic duties, and also the tax revenue went to the Congregationalist church to help fund the church. So because it was the established church, and so the Danbury Baptists, were being treated like second-class citizens, and they knew that Jefferson had written in 1786 the law that brought religious freedom to the state of Virginia. So when he became president in 1801, actually, when he took office, they were excited because, hey, this is our guy. He wrote religious freedom for Virginia. This is our guy. So they sent him a letter. They congratulated him for the wins and gave him their problem. And he responded, well, you know, I can't help you. There needs to be a wall of separation between church and state. Now, see, that's where people stop reading. Then he gives the context. Remember, we were talking about context earlier. Then he gives the context. The federal government has no authority over religion. Period. So that's between you and your state. That's what wall of separation meant. It's between you and your state.
So that means that the federal government cannot create their own religion, as they did in England with King James.
Also cannot dictate to states.
Exactly.
Any religious things. Anything. And so the Danbury Baptists began their fight for religious freedom, and they finally got it in 1818. So almost 3 dozen, or almost 2 dozen years later, should I say, when they wrote a new state constitution for Connecticut, and then the Fundamental Orders of Connecticut, which had been the older, the previous document, which was a very religious document. It's a great document. but it established that church of the Congregationalists, and that needed to be superseded. And so the state constitution superseded the fundamental orders of Connecticut in 1818. And so that's where that comes from. Now, here's what's interesting. So remember, our foundation is Christian. I threw that number 40 in there, show you about the renewal of the Great Awakening, which led to the Revolution. I believe that if it wasn't for that Great Awakening, we wouldn't have had the Declaration of Independence and Constitution.
Right.
And then in 1832, and actually I think he was here through 1836, actually, something like that. But anyway, Alexis de Tocqueville pays a visit to the United States. Now, he's heard that we got the best penal system, prison system in the world. So he came to study it. But as he got to visiting America and looking around, he started noticing things. Remember, this guy's from France. And in France, separation of church and state is huge. Government intrusion into everything you do is huge. And he's watching these communities. There's no government control. The pastors are preaching politics. The politicians are praying, yet one is not controlling the other. How could that be? And he came to the conclusion that America, and America was also going down a dangerous road, and this will tee up something for later. We were becoming more democratic. We're not supposed to be a democracy. We're a republic, but we were becoming more democratic. And democracies always fail, but he indicated in his book, if any country could survive democracy, it would be America, because its people are good. It has a good people who pray and preach politics, and how the religious and political works together symbiotically, symbiosis, rather than one trying to control the other. So that was the conclusion. So once again,
that was back then.
Now, even in the 1800s, there's this religious foundation, this godly foundation that is making America move in the right direction and holding together the republic. And out of that, and our free market system, our system that incentivizes people to do well, we became prosperous.
We did.
And once again, Christian.
And now look at where we're at.
Well, and that,
but we've deviated from that.
Sure. And that the real jerk in the wrong direction was happened during the war between the states. War between the states moved us from being a federal republic to a national system and pushed us closer to democracy. National meaning that the federal government had more centralized control and powers. Before the war between the states.
Right, but we were never meant to be that. We were always meant to be a republic, correct?
Right. Well, and there are mechanisms of our republic throughout the Constitution. I wrote a book called Repeal Democracy, and it really compares chapter by chapter the different mechanisms of what a democracy and a republic is, and why we're supposed to be a republic. So if anybody's
I think
interested,
that most people, they should go on your website and get that book. Or where else can you get it?
Well, right now, Amazon and Barnes & Noble. My store is not up yet, but it's ready to roll. It's just a matter of getting the product to the warehouse and all that jazz. But right now, Amazon. Right,
but you can still get it at Amazon and Barnes & Noble. Everybody has those. Everybody can get those.
So Repeal Democracy.
So important for us to know right now. And not only for us to know, but for our children to know. So if you homeschool, these are great books and great tools. Continue on.
So we got the Christian foundation here. Now let's talk a little bit about democracy. So we have even a Fox News, which some people stop watching, but Fox News, and they're talking about the election. What do they put up on their screen? Democracy 2024.
And it's full of bull.
Well,
and they know better.
What is democracy? I ask people, do they know what it is? They say, well, it's when the people vote. It's the will of the people. It's the voice of the people. Okay. So democracy on its own, that's what it is, but it's really deeper than that. Democracy, well, let's back up. The Constitution was written to distribute power in such a way that too much power wasn't in any one place.
Right. That's our protection, right?
So if the president has too much power and he's a king, we got a problem. If the legislature has too much power, or the judges have too much power, or the states or the federal government has too much power, it's a problem. You don't want too much power in anybody's hands. That also includes we the people. If we have all the power, we also will mess it up. So that's why we're not a democracy, first of all. In fact, in the very, very beginning, when it came to the federal government, the only democratically elected office was the House of Representatives. President was through the electors. You voted for your elector, then the elector voted for president. When it came to Senate, you voted for the members of your state assembly or state House of Representatives. The state Senate actually was elected in a different manner through the county leadership or legislature. And then they were appointing one house each, their senators. So the senators were the voice of the state legislatures. And the state senates didn't used to be voted in by the people either. It was by the county legislatures. And you know how it's 2 per state for the U.S. Senate? Well, at the state level, it was 1 per county. And I don't care who you out there are. If your state had 1 state senator per county, didn't matter what the population was, 1 per county, would your state senate look different? Absolutely. Have you ever looked at the county map for elections? It's a red wave every time, right? So and the reason why I explain all that is
unless you're in California.
Well, no, California too. There's many more red counties than blue. Oh yeah. If it was 1 per county, of course, you'd have to either increase the number of senators or decrease the Senate or whatever, but increase the counties. Yeah. But anyway, the thing is, we have more red than blue. And they did that on purpose because, see, democracy, to give everybody really a true understanding what democracy is, it's the voice of the cities. Because that's where the population is.
Wow.
Democracy is majority, right? And where's the majority of the people? In the cities.
Right.
Now, my first question to people is, do you want people from the cities dictating to a farmer how to farm? Probably not a good idea, right? So then the farmers need to have a voice in government so that the cities aren't dictating to them. But how do you give the rural areas a voice in a democracy if the cities dominate all the voting? So,
good point.
So James Madison in Federalist Paper number 10 explained, so we have factions. And there's no way to get rid of the factions. Just like people complain about the 2-party system. We got to get rid of the 2 parties. We do it naturally. If you got rid of the parties, an issue would come up. People would take sides. Birds of a feather flock together. They'd organize, pick leaders, boom, you have your parties. We do it naturally. So you can't get rid of it, so you got to work with it. Well, what do you do then? And James Madison in Federalist Paper 10 says that you set them against each other. You give the minority voice a loud enough voice that it can be set against the majority voice so that there's discussion and compromise. So the Senate and the state Senate was set up the way they were so that the rural areas had a louder voice so that they could meet on common ground and equal footing, what was going on in the House or the state assembly, which is democratically voted in, which is the voice of the cities. Democracy is the voice of cities. A republic is the minority voice being loud enough that the cities don't control everything.
So right now, it seems it's heavily the other way in California.
Well, because it's a democracy. It's not operating under Republican principles. Once again, state Senate. If the state Senate was not voted in democratically, but were appointed 1 per county. Of course, once again, we got more counties than state seats now, but Senate seats. But it would be decisively Republican, and not only decisively Republican. Those Republicans wouldn't be there because of the vote of the cities. See, right now with democracy, Republicans feel like they have to moderate in order to get the city vote. But if
there's only
your county, and there's no big city in that county, you're not worried about the big city vote. So, as I would like to say, and I hate to say it this way, but a better quality Republican, a truly conservative Republican, not a rhino.
Right. Well, I mean, honestly, in California, there's just a handful of senators who are Republican.
Yeah.
The rest are all Democrat. And they're not just Democrat. Most of them are extreme left.
Oh, yeah. And part of the reason for that damage is not only because of democracy, but it's also because of term limits. Legislative term limits are dangerous. And I've got conservative friends like, we need term limits for the Congress. No, the problem is not that. It's that underground deep state, the staffers. You've been in office. You know what the staff is like. And if you're not listening to the staff, you get in trouble. Well, you got to listen to the staff.
We are having term limit discussions by a certain council member running for re-election. And I'm like, no. We're not even going there.
I believe the staff, the bureaucracy, that's where the term limits belong. I'm a firm believer federally. What we should do is whenever there's a new president, everybody who's associated with the federal government in Washington, D.C. gets their pink slip. And if they want to keep the job, they got to reapply and get rehired.
Yeah, I think you're right.
You got these 50-year hardcore leftists assigned to some junior green, freshman, Republican, and he's told you better listen to your staffer.
Yeah, and they mislead them. It's like a snake. It really is like a snake. And if you think about it, they bob and weave and they lie and they do all kinds of things to manipulate these poor newbies, we'll call them. And then they make decisions that aren't in our best interest. And it doesn't matter, who you are. If it's a Democrat who wins the White House, it should be the same thing. I think you're absolutely spot on that, Doug.
I actually had a friend of mine who was a council member in Marietta, and he did a few things that nobody liked. One, he didn't listen to staff. Two, he read everything. So an ordinance would come up, for vote, and he said, "Well, are you okay with page 89, line 16?" And they're like, "What?" He says, "Yeah, because it says this." Well, how did you know? Because I read it, and and it caused problems. So they eventually got rid of him through an accusation of sexual harassment, which was untrue. I know the guy is a friend of mine, but that's how they got rid of him, because he wouldn't play ball. And the other thing that cracked me up, and this is actually going to take us to a slightly different subject, but it's important, is the guy who had been mayor and kind of the bigwig of Marietta at the time. And I'm not going to name names, but I'm sure you know who I'm talking about.
I do.
And he says, well, part of the problem too is he didn't, propose anything new, and part of the job of being a lawmaker is to make law. Well, how often do you hear that when it comes to Congress too? They call them lawmakers, especially on TV, right? They're not lawmakers. They're representatives. Their job is not to make law. Their job is to represent. And here's what happens if you are a lawmaker and you think that's your job and that's all you do. You make law and you make law and you make law. And when you run out of necessary laws, you start making unnecessary laws. And then when you run out of unnecessary laws, then you start making wacky doodle laws.
Yep. And
because
they just
you're
keep going.
Lawmaker.
Yep.
Not a lawmaker.
Keep going.
You're a representative. You're representative of the people
going.
and you're representative of the rule of law.
We work for the people. And with that, I'm going to take a break and we'll be back with you in just a moment.
Introducing a revolution in roofing. The elegance of Spain now in metal. At LCA Metal, we blend artistry with strength. Our metal sheets capture the classic charm of Spanish design while offering unmatched durability. Resistance to all weather, our sheets are as tough as they are beautiful. These sheets promise longevity and style. With LCA Metal, your roof becomes a statement. Proudly made in San Jacinto, California, our sheets are a testament to American craftsmanship and innovation. Each piece is crafted with precision and care, ensuring the highest quality. In San Jacinto, we not only embrace tradition, but also push the boundaries of technology to bring you the best in metal roofing. Choose LCA Metal for a roof that stands the test of time. Environmentally friendly, energy efficient, and stunningly beautiful, our metal sheets are more than just a choice. Call or visit us today at 951-654-2874.
welcome back. I am Crystal Ruiz, and I'm here with my good friend Doug Gibbs. Doug, let's take it and jump right back into this discussion.
Well, we were talking about lawmakers, and I
Mhm.
mentioned something called the rule of law. People don't understand
Mhm.
what the rule of law is. The rule of law is actually more important than representing the people. People don't realize that. So, well, wait a
Oh,
second, Doug, but
really?
no,
Yeah.
all right. Well, what if the people demand that all people with green eyes be arrested?
Well, exactly.
The rule of
That's how you
law
get the
says that's wrong.
right.
The rule of law comes first.
Mhm.
The people are important. Their
Mhm.
influence and what they say is important. I'm not taking away from that. But
Right.
ultimately, the rule of law is even more important. And the rule of law is what is naturally proper, the natural order of things, and it ties into God's law. So, what is
Mhm.
right and wrong? So, what we have now, and this goes all the way back to our earlier discussions, that now we're out of focus and we're
Mhm.
way off base. Why? Because right and wrong is no longer right and wrong.
Absolutely.
So there is no rule of
Absolutely.
law. And if there is no rule of law, and
Mhm.
I see this, there's a commercial on TV, and I saw this. Oh, what was it? Walmart, I think it was. No boundaries. You know,
Oh,
and I
yes.
and on commercials, you know,
Mhm.
and
They have it
there's
on
no
clothes.
boundaries. You know,
Mhm.
do what you can, do what you want. No
Mhm.
boundaries.
Yep.
Well, if there's no boundaries, we got
Mhm.
a real problem.
And we're seeing that in California.
hmm
And
We're seeing
and
that all
and
over the country, but
I was going
especially
to say
California.
it leads across the nation. As California goes, so does the country, right?
Well,
But
and
we
it's
can
not just
stop it.
that. Well, the thing is, our system is incentive based. It's a free
Mhm.
market. Freedom, liberty is about
Mhm.
your choice, and
Mhm.
and the best way to get people to make good choices is to incentivize them. I'll give you an example.
Mhm.
When we were younger, and you may pick up where I'm going in a minute. When we were
Uh-huh.
younger, and when I got my first job, minimum wage was $4 an hour.
Oh, you started I mean, I think I got 4.18 an hour.
I
No,
was
no,
at
no.
$4 an hour,
I think it was 3.18. I think I was at 3.18 and then it
and in
jumped.
California, they had jumped up they'd raised the minimum wage for adults to like or no, they had raised, I'm sorry, yeah, for adults to like 405 or 410 an hour or something
Mhm.
like that, and they left
Oh,
the under 18 at 4.
yeah.
And all of my friends were getting all upset. Oh my gosh, they don't think we deserve more. You
Mhm.
idiots. They did that so that the adults would quit taking
Jobs.
our
Mhm.
jobs to get into the work industry. See,
Mhm.
something like working at a fast food place, that's an entry level job.
Mhm.
And that's where kids start. And we're not expecting a whole lot from them, but the customer service is usually pretty good because they're making really low wages.
Mhm.
And in order to make better wages and to get a good resume and move up to something other than fast food, they work their butt off to do as well as they can. And I mean, you'd order your stuff and it'd be ready at the window and the order be right and so on and so forth.
And
Today,
they greet you with a smile and yeah,
well,
you had real service.
today we've taken away the incentive. In
Mhm.
California, what do they make at fast food? $16 an hour? $20 an
No,
hour?
they're jumping to 20. Mhm.
It,
$20 an hour.
here in Oregon, while the minimum wage is a little bit lower, I just looked it up earlier. What was it? $13.50 an hour, Virginia. $13.50 an hour is the minimum wage here. It's $7.25 in Mississippi, by the way. That's the
Mhm.
federal minimum wage. Um, and I used to love coming up here because in small town America, I'd go to my fast food place, man, and service with a smile. It was like the old days, right? And the order would
Mhm.
be right, and the lettuce would be almost evenly centered on the bun. And I
Yeah.
mean, now
Everything was
today,
just right.
yeah,
Mhm.
today I had a horrid experience. Well, because they pay everybody so much. When you are in an entry level job, you're learning customer service and you want to
Mhm.
learn it well and do well at it because you want to make more money.
Right.
Now, I've already got mine. I've got my money. What do I
Mhm.
care?
Well, and now it's
There's no
y-
incentive.
right, exactly. And people think, okay, it doesn't matter how I treat you, I'm still going to get that check
Right.
because,
I got
you know,
mine. Who
yeah,
cares? I got mine.
yeah,
And
yeah.
so and I use that example to just to help people understand. A free market economy is about
Mhm.
incentive,
Mhm.
and that's what competition's about. They have the
Right.
incentive to earn your business, so they reduce costs, they raise quality, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because they do that, then they keep that prices come down.
Mm-hmm.
Now there is no incentive, and
No,
and government is causing the cost of doing business to go up anyway.
right.
And
And
so now it's like, oh, my wife got a product earlier from a place, and it seemed like a particular item, and it was not what it used to be. I said, well,
Mhm.
they got to pay people so much, and the cost of the red tape and the taxes is so high. They got to cut costs somewhere. So guess what?
Right.
You get third rate, sauce on your thing rather than what used to be the best out there.
Right. Well, I mean, just think about this. If you've gone into any fast food restaurant in California, everything's kiosked. You don't even see an employee. You're lucky if they hand it to you and say goodbye. Some restaurants are literally leaving the state, closing
Yeah.
down all their California restaurants, leaving the state because they can't even operate. They can't afford to operate here.
Yeah, I can't
But-
remember the exact numbers, but McDonald's had something like 14 or
Mhm.
1,500 restaurants in California, and the plan is to get down to like 200 and something.
Yeah, nothing.
And they're going
And
to
they
the kiosk because you can't afford
Yep.
to pay all these people.
Right.
And then so it's like I tell people, all those people congratulating Gavin Newsom for raising the minimum wage for fast food,
Just put
now
themselves
are
out of a
on
job.
the unemployment line. But here's the other thing.
Mhm.
Now let's get back to the Constitution. That was unconstitutional
Mm-hmm.
because in the 14th Amendment, what does it say? Equal protection under the laws. Everybody's to be treated equally under the law, and you're not supposed to make special laws for certain groups. So how is it then that California can say, oh, this group gets this much minimum wage, this group gets this? Equal protection under the law. California violated the equal protection clause of the 14th Amendment.
It's kind of like what they're doing to Trump.
Sure.
I
Well,
look
in
at
Trump's
look
case,
at
there's so much more.
it's just mind blowing. It's absolutely mind blowing what
Well,
they've done to a single individual because they don't agree with him politically, and he's a danger to them because he doesn't
let's
agree.
look at the constitutional there. I'm hoping you were going to bring up Trump because I have a
Mhm.
feeling you haven't even looked at your questions, but I have a feeling you're going to bring that up. So let's bring up immunity and Jack Smith. Okay.
Oh. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, a lot of people ask me about this a lot. It was the first of all, the Supreme Court correct on immunity? They were mostly correct. They basically said anything that a president does that is tied to his office,
Mm-hmm.
he has immunity. Anything he does personally, he doesn't, and then that can be gone after later on.
Right,
in
like
court of law.
normal. Mm-hmm.
Okay. So first of all, being president is sort of like being in the United States military.
Mm-hmm.
You're always on duty. Everything
Right.
you do is tied to your office.
Yep.
All right. So first of all, everything the president does is tied to the office. So then that would say, well, he has complete immunity over
Mhm.
everything. And then, of course, the Democrats freaked out. Well, that means he can do this and that and just get away with it. No, that's what the impeachment
Mhm.
process is for.
Right.
So here's what the Constitution says. I'll go over. So first, I want to get immunity, and then we'll get over to Jack Smith's latest.
Mhm.
So in Article 1, Section 3 of the Constitution, the very, 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 very tail end, very last paragraph, judgment in cases of impeachment shall not extend further than removal from office and disqualification to hold and enjoy any office of honor, trust, or profit under the United States. What that is saying is that impeachment hearings are a political hearing. In other words, it's not a criminal court, it's a political court. Therefore, the worst punishment is removal from office and you can't run again. Okay, so
Mhm.
you're not going to see somebody who's being impeached marching out in handcuffs and an orange jumpsuit.
No.
That's not criminal court. Then it says, but the Congress, I'm sorry, jumped ahead there. But the party convicted shall nevertheless be liable and subject to indictment, trial, judgment, and punishment according to law. So in other words, if president's immune, however, if he is impeached and convicted in that impeachment, in other words, the Senate convicts and they're thrown out of office, if that thing is a criminal thing, then they are subject to indictment
Going after.
also afterwards, where you can get the nice little shiny bracelets and the beautiful orange
Mhm.
jumpsuit. But Otherwise, they're immune. So first of all, anything that he didn't get impeached for, didn't get convicted, he's immune. Second of all, did President Trump incite insurrection as they are claiming by questioning the election in 2020? Now,
Right.
we know what they've been saying, and he didn't. He said to go peacefully and all that, but it gets deeper
Right.
than
I
that.
saw that live.
But it gets deeper than that, and I'm the only person talking about this. I'm the only person I've heard say what I'm getting ready to tell you. Article 2, Section 3. No, yeah. Article 2, Section 3 of the Constitution.
Mm-hmm.
He shall take care that the laws be faithfully executed. Now, it's his job to make sure all of the laws are executed. What
Right.
that means is that they're executed properly. And guess
Okay.
what? Election laws fall under all the laws.
Right.
So if election laws are being violated, if they're not being
Mhm.
executed properly, as President of the United States, it's his job to
That's his
question
duty.
it if
Mhm.
he believes there's a problem and put people on it.
Right.
That's his job. So he's being accused of inciting insurrection for doing his job as President of the United States.
Yep.
Then finally, Jack Smith's latest filing. Well, yeah, but the insurrection part, that was his personal decision. That was not during the duties of president. Well, the answer now comes from the first two things I talked about. First of all, everything he does is
Right.
within the line of duty. Secondly, it is his job to question if laws are being violated.
Mm-hmm.
And thirdly, and this is my favorite way to explain this, they really believe that was a violent insurrection. We're talking about people who believe in the Second Amendment.
But
if we were half as bad,
you're going
as
there,
they make us out to be, they'd all be wiped out.
They would, because we're armed. Here's the difference. I mean, look at Waltz's home state. Look at the riots there.
Mm-hmm.
And Kamala Harris is bailing their butts out and raising money to bail their butts out. And did you see any of that? No.
Oh, yeah. Well,
no.
Well, I saw it at the time, but yeah, you don't see it in the mainstream
media.
You
didn't see it on January 6th. You didn't see
no.
any of that. People need to understand there's a difference. No one was prosecuted for burning down the cities, for driving people out of their homes, for doing the crimes that were being committed at the time, let alone the crimes that are being committed right now. But the times that were being committed, the crimes that were being committed at the time, they were jailed and let out.
Well,
and yet January 6th, and people are getting years in jail.
Well, I've got a friend of mine who was security at my church. He got 8 years for not even going inside the building. He was on the grass, and he got there 45 minutes after all the hubbub was over.
Yeah. I had a friend who was on the outside, and I just kept saying and praying, because the minute he told me where he was, I was just like, oh my gosh. Because
you
once
know what my friend did?
What?
He and his 3 friends got into a huddle and prayed.
Isn't that crazy? Because they prayed
he's basically
on the grass,
praying on the grounds.
Holy
after
cow!
It all happened. And so now here's the thing: January 6th. What are those people guilty of? They are guilty of executing their First Amendment rights. Mm-hmm. All 5 of them. Think about this: religious freedom. My friends were praying. Freedom of speech, freedom of the press, podcasters, freedom of assembly, and freedom to petition the government for redress of grievances. That's what they were doing. They were exercising, I shouldn't say executing, they were exercising their First Amendment enumerated rights, and the response from the government was to jail them. This is what we fought a revolution over. This is what King George was doing.
This is why Americans are so, excuse my language, but pissed right now about. Mm-hmm. This is what they're pissed about. We have the right to free speech. We have the right to.
And I don't have to ask them for permission. God gave me that right.
Exactly.
And say, well, yeah, but Doug, come on, you can't scream fire in a theater. Well, actually, you can. And the federal government, Congress shall make no law. Congress can't make a law against scream fire in a theater. Well, Doug, you think that's okay? Well, if my state wants to pass a law saying don't scream fire in a theater, then my state can. Federal government, because First Amendment begins with the words, Congress shall make no law.
Right.
Congress shall make no law regarding your speech at all. Well, yeah, but Doug, misinformation.
There's no misinformation. It's written so exactly like that. How can you misinterpret that?
The purpose of the First Amendment is for the protection of misinformation. Of course, the people who have the misinformation, disinformation, are accusing the other people of misinformation, disinformation. But, that's a discussion for another time.
I swear it's so messed up right now. And Doug, our churches are quiet. Our people are quiet. And I don't care what church you belong to. I don't care if you are one of those people that just prays at home. If they can do this to 5 people praying for peace, praying for this country, praying to their God while standing on grass, they can come into your home and take you for praying with your family. And that's a danger.
In 2016, Ted Cruz said that only about a quarter of Christians are voting. And when I heard him say that, I decided to look it up. And it turns out California and federally, the statistics are about the same. And what I found out when I did my research was that of Christians, and in this particular case, I looked up evangelical Christians, but then later I looked up other groups, and all of the groups are about the same. But evangelical Christians in 2016, and I looked it up again a couple years ago, and it was about the same. 49% of those eligible to vote are registered to vote. And of that, so about half Christians are registered. And of those who are registered, about half vote. So that means 1 in 4 Christians
actually
are voting. Okay, 1 out of 4 vote. Now, it gets better. I decided to look up another statistic. California, by number, not percentage, but by number, has more legal gun owners than any state in the union except for Texas. Of course, except for Texas. And of those legal gun owners, about half vote. So now think about this. Half of gun owners, a quarter of Christians are voting. If we could get every gun owner and every Christian out to vote, we would flip California in a day.
Right. And every other state. I mean, it really isn't about going red to blue, Doug. I think it's about, do we fail as America, as the revolution? Does our system fail by us staying home, not voting, not registering, keeping our mouths shut? How's it worked out for you guys so far? It has not. They're jailing people for praying on grass. Give me a break. So
in Ronald Reagan's A Time for Choosing speech, and I think it was like in 68 or something like that, and he said, there is no left and right. There's only up and down.
Yep.
And when it comes to the two parties, listen to me carefully, folks. You know what the difference between the Democrats and Republicans are? I like some of the Republicans. That's it. When it comes to the machine, the deep down machine and the trough they're feeding from, they're the same. Now, that is not to say all hope is lost, because now I'm gonna give loose, and you guys probably could figure it out by now, someone who I really like, Donald J. Trump. Donald J. Trump has taken the Republican Party out of Rhinoville.
Yeah.
And we're excited about the Constitution. We're excited about America, patriotism, and conservative values, and moving in the right direction. Are there a handful of little things that kind of bug you? Sure. Is he kind of a rough guy and used to be a womanizer? Sure, but I'm not asking him out on a date.
He was a construction worker.
I want him to be president of the United States. He was a billionaire single guy. Of course there were ladies around him. But he used to hang out with Democrats. He was a businessman. Businessmen don't see red and blue. They see green, as in money, because both sides have money.
Look at
and
how
long that's the reason why the left hates him so much. He's seen under their skirt.
Well, yeah, he knows all their dirt. And look at how long he's been married to Melania.
Right.
She's an amazing woman. Absolutely. She is fascinating and just charming. And
And
it's
it's a
no
love
wonder.
affair. This is
It
not
is.
just,
This
you know,
isn't about money. It's not about anything other than their love for each other
well, she
and their love for
domesticated him.
she did. And their love, isn't that what a good wife does though? And their love for this country. That's what's amazing. Their families' love for this country. But Doug, I'll do you one better. You know me. I am when I started out in politics, it was 2012. I was a mom on a mission. I had a 1-year-old, 2-year-old, 3-year-old, and 4-year-old, and I was fuming that our city was 3 years from bankruptcy. 3 years. So I went in there. I came from the business world. I was in the restaurant industry for more than 20 years. I learned how to budget. I learned how to go and estimate
Oh, so you totally get what I was saying earlier.
Totally. So yeah, I really lived that. I remember starting that job and starting as, on that bottom level and working your way up. So yeah, I'm right there with you, Doug. But I tell you, I was so irritated because I knew that if we got into the actual budget, we could solve the problem. When I was elected, I told people I was going to balance that budget and I was going to stop the deficit spending. I was going to stop the bleeding. And I walked into office, like a deer in headlights. I'm not a politician. I'm a mom who drives a minivan. And I'm like, all right, suddenly it's like drinking from a hose, You're trying to absorb all this information. And it's kind of
A fire
overwhelming.
hose. I mean,
Exactly. And you know what? It took me 3 years. We went line by line. We ended up having workshops over and over again because each time that you discuss the budget, you only have so many meetings. You have to do it publicly before you're signing the
because
next
of the
budget.
Brown Act, you got to be very
Right.
careful. You can't talk, So that's the only chance you get a chance to discuss it.
Right. And you want to do it publicly because for me, I wanted people to understand, why were we closing this? Why were we moving this? What is this? And so by the time the third year came, we made all the cuts to our city that we possibly could. We ended up laying off staff. We closed parks. We closed a fire station. We were on the verge of cutting our police force. It ended up that we had the police department and the fire department work together to make things work. So we didn't have to cut, but it took a team. We made public-private partnerships work. We opened the parks without another dime from the city. We cut this slush fund that they had prior to me coming, and we said, we can't afford that anymore, and we're not gonna spend that anymore. So we did the job that we were hired to do, and we, from being 3 years from a bankruptcy, we've doubled our general fund. We have nearly doubled total governmental funds, and we're now on solid financial ground. This city's come totally turned around, but it wasn't by me alone. It wasn't by our council alone. It was by partnering with our community to make it happen. That's what needs to happen in this situation. We need people like me to step forward and start running for office. People are talking about school boards. Running for school board is really, really important. Running for city council is really, really important. If you think for one moment
water board is even important.
It is. It's so, so important. But if you think that you're the most important thing when you're running, get out, because you are nothing. What you're doing and who you're representing, that's what's important. Do what's right and wrong. We discussed that before, right, Doug? We need to know what's right and what's wrong. And you have to have moral people to know that. Because if you're going to put in immoral people to, shysters, conmen, people who are willing to say anything for your vote, those are not the people you want. You want people who are moms and dads, grandparents. You want young people who are willing to do the hard work and not afraid of taking the hits when you have to make the tough decisions. But what happens is we get good people don't normally stay around like I do. Good people, I think, get that shine rubbed off really quick.
Well,
and then they realize
good people and they throw in term limits and then we lose our good people.
Right.
And,
Absolutely.
but the staff is still there.
Staff is still there. Yep. Now, I'll tell you, when we changed over our city manager and we realized that the city manager works for the city council, the staff works for the city manager. Let them do their job. You guide them, you correct them, but let them do their job. Most cities, you want to go in and micromanage what the city manager's doing, and that just mucks things up because then they have not only their boss, the city manager, but they have 5 council members to appease, or 7, or however many you have. You can't do that. It's like running a business. You have one boss, but you have all these people around you. You have all your assistant managers, shift managers, all of these different things. Let them do their jobs. You're going to have those that shine. Those are the ones you're going to train and bring up, and you're going to promote. And then you're going to say, hey, I want you to open up this restaurant, or I want you to do, this great thing. And you're going to have people you can build on. That's the best way to run it. Just like that, like Trump's doing. Now, I'll tell you, the last time he was in office, I think he trusted too many people. Too many people
and he's learned his lesson. Actually, I think it was a blessing that they stole it in 2020, because now he's been on the inside and the outside. Now he looks back, he goes, yeah, I had a lot of people I couldn't trust around me. And
he sees them now.
That wisdom is what led to J.D. Vance. J.D. Vance not only was a great choice conservatively, but also it was insurance.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
So once
Thinking
he
ahead.
gets elected, man, they ain't taking him out, because J.D. Vance is right behind him.
Well, and J.D. Vance is young, and he is really appealing to people. I think he's genuine.
The vice presidential debate really opened a lot of people's eyes. I mean, he was
mine. They opened mine.
He didn't react. He responded. I mean, and reaction versus response is huge, especially in politics.
He didn't let him get away with too much. You know what I'm saying? I mean, there's a point. I had
and he knew his stuff.
Right.
Walls.
I've had a couple of debates recently, and I've had to really curb my mouth, because my first reaction when they lie is I want to call them on the carpet. I want to go, you know what? You're full of it. But I've learned, being female, can't do that. You have to find other ways to get your point across. And in the end, I do a lot of praying. You'll see me, if you ever watch me, I'm sitting up there, my hands are crossed like this. And I don't know if you can see them, but my hands are crossed like this. And I'm sitting at the dais, and I'm like praying to God the whole time. Like, what are you going to say? It's when I was with Trump.
Please give me the wisdom to say the right thing.
Exactly. Curb my tongue, God. Because sometimes I just want to take a frying pan to somebody's head, but I can't do it. And I tell my husband, he laughs, because he loves politics. He loves, he is so smart. He's like you, really, really intelligent. He loves all that history and stuff. Between the two of you guys have me covered, okay? Because I'm like, all right, I'm the one that just wants to go right for that frying pan and go, whack you with that. But I have to pull back, and I have to learn. I had to learn to go, okay, be careful about how we say it. I'm a female, it goes differently. We're looked at differently. But we have to have tough skin, and I need people. You need people. My family needs people. My community needs people. My country needs people like you and me, who are willing to step up and take the hits, who are willing to put in their heart and soul into these positions and run for the right reasons, stay in there for the right reasons, go for higher office. Never, ever, ever believe you're too good. And really try and keep yourself grounded, because I think people get into these positions, and it's funny, Doug, a lot of people I started with, they're long gone. A lot of them were coerced by the lights and all the benefits that they get. Do you know, I never got offered any benefits. I never have been offered any benefits. It's probably because if they offered me stuff, I'd say, I don't think so. Who do I report this one to?
You would probably expose it. Yeah,
I would. You know me. I don't like. It's good and bad, right and wrong, and I have to live with what I do. I have to live with what I know, and if I'm going to know something that somebody's done that's not right, somebody who's going to be in a position to stop it is going to find out. because I can't stay silent.
Law is really what this all is around. And Solon, who was a Greek philosopher and political philosopher, said, without law, there is no freedom. So you need the boundaries, you need the law, but at the same time, you only need necessary law. And that goes back to what I was talking about earlier with the lawmakers. So it's a balancing act. Government is a necessary evil. We need it. We need law. We need all of those things. We need an orderly society. But when there is no morality and there's no boundaries, then you wind up with lawlessness.
Right.
So, and then what happens when the lawlessness happens is the very people who created the lawlessness, when people cry out for order, say, we'll give you order.
Yep, we'll give you new laws.
We'll give you dictatorship. We'll give you authoritarianism. Ultimately is what it becomes.
And people say yes.
That is something that's played out in history over and over and over.
And that's the precautions. That's the cautions that we're warning about right now, because those signs are already here. We already know that this is coming. And the only way we're going to stop it is if people get out and vote heavily.
Some of the most patriotic people I know and some of the loudest voices I know against what's going on are immigrants from former communist countries.
Oh, absolutely.
They recognize, they see, they're like, I came here to get away from that kind of talk. The Democrat Party now and some of the Republicans are now speaking and saying things that I left my country to get away from.
Yep. Do you remember when in 2018, when I was with Trump at the White House talking about the sanctuary state laws?
I remember that.
That is the same thing.
I knew 3 people in that room, by the way. I was very proud of that. But anyway, go ahead.
But that was the thing I told him, was that my folks in my community are Hispanic. They stopped me the minute they found out that I knew for Trump. They pulled me over to a Hispanic church, and the church member sat outside talking to me for the longest time, telling me, I want you to talk to the president. I want you to tell him this. And I tried to remember verbatim what they said, but of course you're talking to the leader of the free world, with 200 cameras on you. But I tried to articulate it. But I'll tell you what, President Trump actually paid attention. President Trump actually cared about what happens even in California.
I've heard that about him.
He really tried to be a part of the solution for us, and to be there for us. And he reached out to me 6 times to come to the White House. I went 5. Had I known, I was afraid I was going to get fired the 6th time, because he asked me to go to have a tour of the White House at Christmas time. And I so wanted to go. But I knew if I took off, I would get fired from my job. And I worked for an insurance company, and we needed that income. And you know what? A year later, they fired me. For why? Because I wouldn't take the jab. And not for the reason you think. I didn't take the jab because I asked them a simple question. They said to us, if you want to do a religious exemption, you're fine. Don't worry about it. We have a third party handling it. I went, third party? What third party? And so I asked over and over, what third party? What third party? What third party? They refused to answer me. Next thing I know, 3 months later, here I am with my check. And it didn't take very long. And it was just a few days later that there was Nancy Pelosi and Schumer and all them sitting in a press conference saying, we got the a full database of an insurrectionist, and they volunteered their information. Boy, my husband looked at me and he goes, how did you know? And I said, because I work for the government. I get it. This is the same thing they did to the Jews. And you know what? We can't let this happen. It should never, ever have happened to the Jewish people. It should never happen to the Christians. Do you remember Mike Morrell? Senator Mike Morrell?
Matter of fact, I'm still in touch with him.
I absolutely adore him.
Yeah.
I
used to tell Jeff Stone the only reason why he was conservative is because he shared desks with Mike Morrell. But anyway,
that was it. They rubbed off on each other. When Mike left office, somebody asked him, and this was not reported from Mike. This was reported from somebody else. They asked him, what are they going to do with all of the empty jail cells? Because they've let everybody out, in California. Nothing's a crime, right? And without hesitation, he said, it's for the Christians. Think about that one. And now
you're a Christian nationalist.
Think about your friends. Yeah. Can we see where this is going? If the Christians don't get out to vote, if the gunners don't get out and vote, where are we going to be in 4 more years? They've already had 4 years. And look at where this is going.
They are pushing not only for the White House, but both houses of Congress. They get that. They'll change the court system without even a single obstacle, like California with its supermajority. Once they get that that's what they're shooting for. And once they get that supermajority, where they get the presidency and both houses, because they learned with Obama when they didn't get enough done when they had all 3. So now they're ready. They learned, and also they are going to do everything they can to make sure that they get what they want. And before the 2 assassination attempts, I told my audiences they have tried to do everything they can. They've only got one thing left. They've got to take him out.
And I tell you, they're going to try a couple more times.
And actually, there's been 3. One of them got stopped before with the Iranian thing. But but the next one is not going to be some yokel. It's going to be a professional hit.
They already are. They are already coming from him, and they've hypened up the rhetoric, trying to stir this up to make it look like that it's some, punk.
Well, he brought it upon himself. It's because of what he says, right?
Yeah.
That's
what they're going to say. And the worst part is this time they're not going to take out just him. They're going to take out those around him. I mean, think about this. About the bomb scare.
Mm-hmm.
Those were not fake. They were not fake. We're going to take a break for just a moment, Doug. Give us just a second, and you might see my camera shut off for a moment, and it'll go right back on. So hang on. We can talk. He's got to flip that battery out.
Okay.
Oh, there it is.
And I got to go pick up some copies. So 5 or 10 minutes, probably what I got left.
More, and that's it. All right. Perfect.
I've really enjoyed this, by the way. We need to do this more.
Me too. Well, and that's what I'm going to ask you publicly. So brace yourself for that one.
Well, you know what? A year ago, I would not have had the internet connection up here. The internet up here is new. So it used to be just satellite, and that stuff, my phone is faster.
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah. But now I've got 4 times the speed I had Marietta for only about $25 more a month.
Oh, nice. Nice. What is it?
It's called Beacon, which is attached to our electrical co-op up here. Because the electrical
I've heard
co-op,
of that.
Yeah, but anyway.
But it works faster.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I've got it's fiber. It's fiber.
Oh, nice.
And I was see down in Marietta. Actually, I could get this fast, but it was way too expensive. So I had like half a gig. Here I've got 2 gigs for like $25 more a month. Up there to get this much 4 gig or 2 gigs, it would have been double the price.
Oh, wow. Wow. And then look at this new Starlink thing. Have you checked that out?
Well, that's been around for a while, but it was only to certain rural areas. And that's something I was looking into before they put Beacon up here. But yeah, that's Elon Musk. And,
we like Elon.
Yeah.
All right.
He's not awesome, not super conservative, but he's definitely leaning in the right direction.
Yeah, I love it. We are back with Douglas V. Gibbs. So, Elon Musk, we just were talking off the air. Elon Musk is pretty amazing. I really wasn't sure I'd like him at all. But now I'm kind of liking him more and more.
And I think he's sort of like Trump in that sense. See, when Trump first ran for president, he wasn't a conservative per se. He leaned in that direction, but he wasn't really conservative per se. And while he had been raised in a Christian household, he wasn't this excited, for Christ, type Christian. but he was familiar. He'd grown up in the faith.
Mhm.
When the left attacked him the way they did, they literally threw him into our arms, and he
Oh,
knew
yeah.
who his friends were. And I think out of that, Trump became more conservative and more Christian. Now you have Elon Musk, and Elon Musk, transhumanist, a few other things that I'm not necessarily okie dokie with, and not necessarily a conservative guy. He's, a big brain, and usually big brains think themselves out of faith and
Right.
common sense. And but when he decided to take action for freedom of speech, they attacked him so hard, like Trump, they threw him into our arms. I think he's becoming more conservative because of that circumstance.
Right. And I think when Trump got shot, he, like us, were watching live and saw the whole thing go down. And when Trump came up with the defiance and the righteous anger and the fight that he brought forth, that did something to Elon.
I think
And
so. It did things to a lot of people.
It did something to America. You're talking, people are worried about an actual physical fighting war here. I don't think you're going to see a fighting war. We're all armed, right?
Well, we're in World War IV already. World War III was the Cold War. World War IV has been a cyber war and an internal conflict, and China with their influences. It's been a non-kinetic war.
But good versus evil, nonetheless.
Right, exactly. Will there be a kinetic part of it? I don't know. I hope not. But we're already in World War IV.
Well, and you know what? It's going to take us to stand up and say no more. If we're going to avoid the actions of the past, we need to learn from the past, learn from what we've done in the past. We don't want to go there. We know that. We just have to be fired up enough to turn in our ballots.
There's two sayings that goes with that. And first one you've heard before, which is those who forget the past are doomed to repeat it. But my favorite is Mark Twain. Mark Twain said that history doesn't repeat itself, but sometimes it rhymes.
Oh, that's good. I like that one. I hadn't heard that one.
And I'm a firm believer in that. But yeah, the way to tell the future is to know the past. And right now we are on a path to a very dangerous future. And it's sort of like the second law of thermodynamics. Order goes to disorder. When does order not go to disorder? When something stops it from doing it.
Right.
There must be a force that stops the road from order to disorder. Yep. And we have to be that force. And otherwise disorder is on the horizon.
Right. And it's up to us to take our ballots and turn them in.
Well, it's not just that, but also it's like, when I give my speeches in my classes, and sometimes I'll have someone come up to me, and this happened in Fallbrook one time, and a gentleman walked up to me and says, Doug, you really lit a fire under my bottom. I'm excited. I want to do something, but I'm not a phone call guy. I'm not a door knocker. I don't speak to people. I don't know how I can help. I don't want to run for office. I don't want to, rah for what do I do? And I said, find your favorite candidate and offer to stuff their envelopes. Yeah. There is something for everyone to get involved. I've run for office twice myself, and I've got a lot of people now trying to convince me to run for Congress. But and it's not for everybody. Running for office is not for everybody. And I mean, when I ran for council in Marietta back 2010, I was learning all kinds of stuff about me that wasn't true.
Isn't that amazing?
There was one website that was saying I was a carpetbagger from Chicago. I've only been to Chicago once, and it was a layover. I mean,
Oh my gosh. And that's the reputation you got for a layover? My goodness. I don't even want to know my reputation.
So running for office, I mean, it takes a very thick skin to run for office. It really does. Yeah.
And you really have to have that heart for that.
Yeah.
But you're right. There's something for everyone.
And here's the thing too, and I'm going to get close to wrapping up here because of other things, but this is something that is actually close to my heart because it's important for me too. Sometimes we want to help and we do what we can, but we want to help more, but we don't know how. And there are some people out there that are doing a lot more than we can do. Then support those people. And
Right.
that's not just through assistance, but also monetarily. What I
Right.
do takes funding. I have
Mhm.
2 radio shows on 3 stations, and I pay for my airtime. How I was paying for them before was my Constitution classes. They went bye-bye.
Mhm.
I
Yeah.
am now up here doing everything online. But if you go to douglasvgibbs.com,
Mhm.
douglasvgibbs.com, $9 a month patron subscription. We don't have any exclusive stuff for our patrons yet. That's coming. $9 a month. That's less. That's less than a cup of coffee at that place, with a mermaid on their logo. That place, yeah. That's less than a cup of coffee from that place. $9 a month patron. I get enough folks doing that. Right now I've got enough advertisers that 2/3 of my radio costs are covered. The other third comes out of my credit card. So help the movement. Plus, also,
Right.
I'm talking with legislators in Utah and legislators in other states because I'm trying to start a restoration of the republic to get back to uh, one state senator per county, to get the 17th Amendment repealed, things like that. I'm a part of a lawsuit that was launched against Kamala Harris, which, by the way, when it got to the Supreme Court, we filed it, a writ of certiorari with the Supreme Court. Now they can't find it. What a
Oh,
surprise.
magically.
I
Yeah.
tell people our lawsuit at the Supreme Court is sort of like at the end of Raiders of the Lost Ark when they take that Ark of the Covenant and they get a giant warehouse and they stick it in a hole somewhere.
Yeah.
We may never see that thing, but I'm a part of a lawsuit against Kamala Harris, and we're going to probably hit her again with a different one because she used federal legal to fight against us. And it
Ooh.
was a lawsuit against her personally, not her office. So she
Wow.
actually misused federal funds to fight against us on that lawsuit. So, but once again, that kind of stuff takes money. And we had a fundraiser last September for the Constitution Association, nonprofit that I'm also a part of, president of. And after all of our costs,
Mhm.
we walked away with like $250.
Nice.
Uh,
If you can walk away with $250, you are doing well.
yeah, but
You're
I mean,
doing
well, we
well in
used to
that.
walk away with $2,500 at our,
Yeah, but hey, these
I mean,
days are
but
tough.
my point is, people don't have money.
No.
People who have been tapped are tired of being tapped, and we've got to
Right.
fund these things somehow. $9
Right.
a month, everybody gets involved. I get enough people, we're funded. So
Right.
DouglasVGibbs.com, my name.com.
I
Hit
tell
the
you what,
join
Doug,
link.
before you leave, I want a commitment from you that you're going to come back and we're going to chat some more because there is so much that we can learn from you. And I really, really, really want people to understand how important this country is to not just you and me, but how important it is to our kids and grandkids. And how can we help save this country?
Absolutely. And
Because we can do this.
our friendship, it's funny because we've known each other a long time. And we've never had a chance to like hang out, but we hang
No.
out like on stuff like this.
Yeah.
But I've always appreciated it because you do something that most people who are office holders have real trouble doing:
What's that?
listening.
Yeah.
That's
true.
You're a listener, and that's fantastic. And there's one other thing: you realize you don't know everything, and you've got room to grow. And most of those knuckleheads out there, they are, God's gift or whatever, and they think that
Yeah.
they're,
I can't. You know what? I'm not that well. You know me. I'll just call you
and
up,
I
Doug. I
appreciate
got a
that about
problem.
you. This was fun. Thank you.
Thank you for coming.
My schedule is different than it used to be. I'm not teaching classes and all that all the time. So
Well,
I'm
that's
usually able to
good.
squeeze stuff in a lot easier.
Good.
But we are working on a national online presence. So for those of you, like I said, I was on the Power Hour this morning, which is a nationally syndicated radio show.
I've heard of the Power Hour. That's pretty good. Well,
Yeah.
Fox News, Hey.
Well, I've been on the Power Hour. I think this was like my, I don't know, 8th or 9th time. I'm on there
Nice.
quite a bit.
Nice.
I get interviews with radio stations around the country, but I'm gonna tell you what, the funnest stuff I do is with podcasters and Rumble video guys and stuff like that. That's where, because I could just let it all hang out. Power Hour, I gotta kind of, because you got that national audience, and and you got the engineer in the background, kind of steering things. Stuff here, I'm just like, let it all hang out and be me, and I appreciate that. Thank you.
Well, and I appreciate you, and I'm glad everybody got to sit in on this one, and we'll invite them back for the next one, and we'll schedule it shortly. I know you have to go.
Shoot me the
Thank
links.
you.
I'll send it out to
I
my
will.
peeps.
I will. Thank you for joining us. Bye-bye, everybody. See you next time.